This happened a few years ago. I was about 35, a freelance journalist, and I often dug into local folklore for stories. I decided to return to my hometown, to that old lake I used to visit as a kid. I didn't consider myself an expert on camping, but I'd done it enough times. It felt strange being back, the memories mixing with the murky waters that seemed to hide more than just fish. I've never stopped thinking about what happened next. On my first night I set up camp. The woods were quiet, just the sound of water lapping against the docks. I tried to relax. Around midnight I heard something. It was soft laughter, echoing from the lake. I thought maybe it was kids playing nearby. But when I looked, I saw no one. The water shimmered under the moonlight, but I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold night air. It was strange. I pushed the thought aside. Just my imagination, I told myself. The next day, I walked along the shoreline, looking for signs of other campers. I didn't see anyone. Then I noticed strange markings on the trees. They were more than scratches. They looked almost deliberate, like symbols. My heart sped up when I noticed shadows flickering across the surface of the water later in the afternoon. I stared, but each time I blinked, they vanished. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Locals at the general store seemed uneasy when I mentioned the lake. They shared stories, whispering about dark legends. I remember a woman saying, "People have gone missing." But whenever I asked for specifics, they turned quiet, eyes narrowing at me. Maybe they thought I was digging too deep. My last night at the lake, I felt a weight in the air. I lay in my tent, unable to sleep. I heard the laughter again. It was closer this time. My pulse raced. I unzipped the tent flap and peeked outside. The moonlight cast everything in silver. I saw them, 3 figures standing at the water's edge. They were just silhouettes. I called out softly, "Hello?" They didn't turn. I took a step toward them, but they vanished. My heart raced even faster as I stood frozen. And then, out of the darkness, a voice whispered, "Why are you here?" I couldn't move. No one was there. I felt a fear I hadn't known before. The surrounding woods seemed to close in on me. I stumbled back to my tent, fumbling to zip it up. I waited there, breathless. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I had gone to investigate stories, but now it felt like I was part of one. I didn't sleep at all that night. As dawn approached, I packed my things quickly and left. I never looked back at the lake. As I drove away, the laughter echoed in my mind, a chilling reminder of what I couldn't explain. I didn't stop driving until I reached my small apartment in the city. The noise of the bustling streets felt like a balm, but the lake still haunted me. I tried to focus on my work. I even wrote a few drafts about local legends, but nothing could shake the images of those figures. A week later, I received an email from an old friend. Tom had always been into researching folklore and paranormal events. He attached an article titled, "The Lost Children of Lake Hallow." My heart plummeted as I read it. The article detailed the disappearances of several kids over the years, all near the very spot where I'd camped. One story mentioned laughter echoing from the lake, haunting the dreams of those who lived nearby. As I read further, I noticed a name mentioned repeatedly, Elise. She was one of the first to vanish 30 years ago. The accounts described her as a free spirit, often seen near the water. People said she had a special connection to the lake, but no one really knew what happened to her. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was somehow linked to what I experienced. I felt compelled to dig deeper, despite the unease that clung to me like a cold shadow. I opened my laptop and began to search for anything else related to Elise. The more I read, the more details surfaced. Rumors about rituals held at the lake. Whispers of strange markings found along the shore. I was beginning to make connections, but they felt elusive. I decided to reach out to Tom. We hadn't spoken in years, but I typed out my findings and the experience at the lake. I hit send, my heart racing at the thought of what he might say. Not even an hour later, my phone buzzed with a reply. He was fascinated and wanted to check out the lake with me again. We arranged to meet that weekend. I felt a mix of anticipation and dread. What if the laughter returned? I kept telling myself it was my imagination, but deep down, I felt that I needed to understand this mystery, to face whatever lingered back at Lake Hallow. As I drove back, the landscape felt different. The road wound through the trees, and the shadows felt deeper. When I finally arrived, dusk was settling in. The lake shimmered, but it was different now. The water was still, reflecting a sky plagued by dark clouds. As I set up camp, the laughter rang faintly in the distance. Just as I was starting to regain my calm, Tom arrived, breathing heavily, but grinning, unfazed. "You ready for this?" he asked. I nodded, but my stomach churned. That's when I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. A figure, standing at the water's edge, just a silhouette again. My heart dropped, but I couldn't look away. This time, it didn't disappear. I felt the air thicken around us, charged with an electricity I couldn't explain. Tom had moved closer to the campfire, oblivious to the figure by the lake. I wanted to call out, to warn him, but my voice seemed trapped in my throat. The silhouette remained there, motionless, blending into the encroaching darkness. "Hey, you okay?" Tom asked, glancing back at me. The amusement faded from his face when he noticed my stiff posture. "Look," I managed to whisper, somehow still unable to tear my gaze away. "Over there." Tom turned slowly. His expression shifted from confusion to concern. I could tell he'd sensed something was off. The laughter I had heard before echoed once more, a soft, childlike tinkle that drifted across the water. It filled the space between us, and chills raced down my spine. He squinted toward the lake, but whatever had drawn my attention was gone. I felt a wave of disappointment mingle with relief. Maybe it was a trick of the light. Maybe I was imagining things. Yet deep down, the nagging feeling that something was wrong wouldn't leave me. "You sure this is a good idea?" Tom asked, eyes still scanning the shadows. "This lake has a history, right? Those stories. I want to understand." I shook my head, forcing myself to sound more confident than I felt. "We need to figure out what happened to Elise." Tom nodded, the earlier excitement fading into something more serious. We sat in silence for a moment, the only sound coming from the crackling fire. The air felt heavy, as if the lake itself was holding its breath, waiting. I pulled out the article about Elise. "It says she was last seen near here, near the old dock," I said, my voice trembling a little. "People heard laughter, and then—" "Nothing." Tom rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "Your experience at the lake was similar, right? What if there's a connection?" Before I could respond, I heard it again, the laughter carrying across the lake, clearer this time. It sounded almost joyous, like children playing just out of sight. I shivered. "Let's check out the dock," Tom suggested, the excitement returning to his tone. "We need to get a closer look." Even as I nodded, I hesitated. Something deep inside warned me to stay by the fire, but curiosity won out. We grabbed our flashlights and made our way down the path toward the dock. As we approached, the laughter faded, replaced by an eerie silence. My heart raced, each step feeling heavier than the last. The dock loomed ahead, a dark structure silhouetted against the oppressive sky. Tom moved ahead, eager. I followed, my instincts shouting for me to turn back. The dock creaked under our weight. I craned my neck, searching for any sign of life. That's when I saw it, drawn in the mud by the water's edge. A perfect circle surrounded by unfamiliar markings, much like what I had read about Elise's disappearances. My breath hitched as I knelt down, my flashlight beam illuminating the pattern. I started, but before I could finish, something moved in the water. A ripple, followed by a sudden, chilling silence enveloping us. And then I heard it, a whisper, soft and pleading. "Help me." I froze, my blood running cold. Tom looked at me wide-eyed, and the realization struck us both at once. We were not alone. I couldn't breathe. My heart hammered in my chest as the whisper hung in the air, heavy and expectant. Tom's gaze darted around, his flashlight beam flitting nervously over the water's surface. "What was that?" he asked, barely above a whisper. His voice trembled, betraying the bravado he had shown earlier. I shook my head, trying to convince myself it was just our imaginations playing tricks, but deep down I knew it felt real. "Maybe it's just the wind," I offered weakly, though I didn't believe it for a second. The stillness around us felt wrong, too quiet. It was as if the world had paused, holding its breath along with us. We stood there frozen until Tom willed himself to move. "I think we should go," he finally said, stepping backward. Just then, the water shifted again. A dark shape broke the surface. My pulse quickened. It wasn't just a ripple, it had a form. It was close enough now that I could distinguish a face, pale, waterlogged, a mouth opening as if trying to speak. "Help me!" The voice echoed again, more insistent, sending my instincts into overdrive. I stumbled back, grabbing Tom's arm. "Did you see that?" I choked out, barely able to process what I was witnessing. "I did," he replied, his face pale. He gripped my shoulder tightly. "We need to leave, now." The figure in the water vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving behind only dark ripples that spread outward like breath marks on glass. I turned, urging Tom to run, but my feet felt glued to the dock. "No, wait," I whispered, scanning the shoreline, desperate to catch another glimpse. "Let's go!" Tom tugged at me, his urgency pushing me toward the path. I finally broke free from my paralysis and ran alongside him. We hurried up the path, the laughter returning, now shriller, echoing in our minds. It taunted us, drawing us back while urging us to flee all at once. I could hardly think. My head spun with questions. What had we just seen? Was that Elise? I asked breathlessly as we reached the fire pit, fumbling with my flashlight. The flames seemed feeble against the surrounding darkness. Tom shook his head, firelight flickering over his face. "I don't know. But we have to find out what's happening here." "I don't want to," I admitted, my voice trembling. "What if it's dangerous?" He met my eyes, and suddenly I could see the resolve hardening in his gaze. "If you want to understand what happened to Elise, we need to dig deeper. Those markings, maybe they mean something." I glanced back toward the lake, half expecting to see the figure again. Nothing but shadows stared back. "Okay, but we can't go back alone," I said, my heart racing. "We need to bring someone else." Tom nodded. But before we could move, the laughter erupted again, louder, echoing across the lake, wrapping around us like a heavy fog. I stumbled back, fear coursing through me. "No one else will believe us," I whispered, panic rising again. But even as I said it, I felt the pull of the mystery. I wanted to know more. Behind the laughter I heard the whisper again. "Help me?" "Fine," Tom relented, although uncertainty flickered across his face. "But we need to be careful. This isn't just a story anymore, it's real." As we stared into the darkness, adrenaline coursed through me. Whatever was out there was still watching. And we were about to uncover something that might be darker than I could imagine. Before I could consider what we'd gotten ourselves into, a distant sound caught my ear, a distant splash. My blood ran cold. Something was stirring in the water again. The splash echoed again, more pronounced this time. My heart raced as I gripped Tom's arm tighter. The water was alive. A part of me wanted to shout, to demand answers from whatever was lurking beneath, but fear clamped my throat shut. "What was that?" I asked, my voice shaky. "I don't know," Tom whispered, his breathing quickening. "We can't stick around to find out." I glanced toward the lake, a mixture of dread and curiosity pulling me in. But what if it's trying to communicate? Or it's something we should stay away from, he shot back, his eyes darting nervously to the water. Just as we turned to leave, the laughter erupted again, sending chills racing down my spine. This time it felt closer, like it was wrapping around us. I took a step back, drawn by a strange need to stay. The whisper was back, echoing through the trees. "Help me." I felt the words deep in my bones. I didn't want to feel this way, but I had to know who or what was begging for help. "What if it's Elise?" I said, although doubt laced my words. "Then we should have called the police the first time," Tom replied, frustration boiling beneath his fear. I shook my head, but my resolve was weakening. Every fiber in my being told me it was a bad idea to investigate further, yet my feet were glued to the ground. "We need to—" Suddenly Tom's flashlight flickered, casting a brief shadow across the water. From the corner of my eye, I spotted something bobbing near the shore. It was too dark to discern, but the glint of something metallic caught the light. "There!" I pointed, my voice rising in excitement and fear. Tom pulled me back. "No, we'll regret this." But I started moving towards the shoreline anyway, my breath coming in shallow gasps as the laughter grew louder, blending with the splashes. "It could be evidence. We might help. It might help us understand." As I approached, my heart raced with every step. I could feel the water lapping at my feet, my mind racing. I crouched low, reaching out into the darkness, and my fingers brushed against what felt like fabric. I pulled it from the water, my stomach twisting with dread. It was a torn piece of clothing. I recognized the pattern. Elise's favorite hoodie. My breath caught in my throat. "That's it!" I mouthed in horror. Tom leaned closer, his mouth agape as he examined the fabric. No, it can't be. We need to go." Panic flooded his voice. "I can't just leave it here," I replied desperately, clutching the wet fabric. But before I could tug it free, the splashes intensified. Then I saw it again, a figure surfacing right where I was looking, pale, ghostly, eyes locking on mine, pleading. "Help me!" I stumbled back, my heart racing as a cold wind swept through, extinguishing our flashlight. The darkness engulfed us completely. Tom grabbed my arm, panic leaking through his grip. "We have to—" Then everything went quiet. And just like that, the figure faded away once more, leaving behind nothing but stillness and the echo of my racing heart. I gripped Tom's arm, frantic breaths escaping my lips. Something was coming for us, and we were running out of time. The silence pressed heavily around us. I could barely hear my own breathing above the rush of adrenaline. I felt Tom's grip tightening, as if he thought I might vanish into the shadows. "We have to go now," he urged, but his voice was barely above a whisper. "Wait," I breathed, still grappling with the sight of that figure. "What if it needs us?" I could still feel the ghostly eyes boring into my soul, a silent scream imprinted in my mind. "It's not human," Tom shot back, looking back toward the water with a mix of anger and fear. "We don't know what that thing is." But I couldn't think of anything else but the plea I'd heard. "It was asking for help, Tom. If we leave now, we might never find out what happened." The rush of panic in my chest dulled my caution. "Then what?" His gaze darted nervously. "You want to wait around until it comes back? We're not equipped for this." The laughter echoed again, raw and mocking. It was close, too close. I felt another sinking certainty that if we didn't act, it would draw us in and take us too. "Think," I replied quickly. "What if we found something else? We can't be the only ones who heard that. There has to be more." I glanced around, scanning the shadows. "If we could just—" Tom's eyes widened as a figure moved at the water's edge. I flinched, my heart racing. This time, it was not the ghostly figure. It looked more human, a shadowy outline beckoning us closer. "Don't move!" Tom hissed sharply, pulling me back again, but part of me wanted to move forward. I could see a desperate urgency in the figure's movements, an erratic energy that mirrored my own. As we stood there, frozen between instinct and fear, the figure suddenly lunged toward the water. I screamed, the noise breaking the stillness like glass shattering. "Wait!" I felt the panic choke my voice as I darted forward, instinctively reaching out. It was a young woman, her face pale and unsteady, but her eyes were wild. She looked just as lost and terrified as we were. "Help me!" she cried again, her voice raw. "She is trapped." "Who?" I asked, trying to process it all. "What do you mean?" "Elise, you have to help her. She's drowning." She pointed wildly to the depths of the lake where shadows pooled like ink, as if something lurked just beneath the surface. My heart sank. Elise. Before I could take a step closer, the shadow in the water shifted violently, sending ripples crashing outward. The eerie laughter resumed, now in harmony with the young woman's frantic cries. Everything was spiraling. Then, without warning, the ground beneath us trembled as the water surged. I stumbled backward, pulling Tom with me, and that's when I heard something beneath the surface. A chorus of voices, layered and haunting, all merging into a cacophony of fear. "Go! Now!" Tom shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. As I turned to run, the woman's desperate eyes sent a chill through me. Whatever was in the water was calling out to us, and I felt drawn back. But one look at Tom's face told me I had to make a choice. I took a deep breath and bolted ahead, the urgency pulling us away from the lake, but my heart felt tethered to the chaos behind us. "What was that?" I gasped while sprinting. "I don't know, but we need to get help," he said, urging me forward. But even as we dashed away, echoes of both laughter and pleading trailed after us, the dark promise of what we'd left lingering just beyond reach. The night was far from over, and a storm was brewing ahead. The next few steps felt like they lasted an eternity. I could hardly see past the shadows around us as we ran, but I could still hear that laughter, an echoing taunt that followed us through the trees. The feeling of cold fingers gripping my spine was impossible to shake off. Tom didn't let up on his pace. "We need to find the nearest town. They'll have someone who can help." His words shot me a jolt of reality. I knew he was right, but I couldn't shake the image of that woman's terrified face from my mind. A surge of uncertainty crashed over me. "What if Elise is real?" I said between breaths. "What if she's actually drowning?" Tom stopped abruptly, the urgency in his eyes creeping into a mix of frustration. "And what if she isn't? What if she's just another trap? We can't risk our safety for something we don't even know is real." I opened my mouth to argue, but then decided against it. He was right, yet my heart felt heavy. There was something about the woman that pulled at my sense of responsibility. By leaving, we could be abandoning someone in desperate need. Suddenly, a loud splash echoed from behind us. I spun around, eyes wide. The lake, dimly lit by a fading moon, seemed to pulse like a living thing. Then I saw it, a shadow breaking the surface, rising and bending like something emerging from a nightmare. I grabbed Tom's arm. "What was that?" He squinted, trying to make sense of what was happening, but it was too dark, too chaotic. Whatever it was vanished beneath the rippling water, replaced by a calm that felt entirely false. "Let's go," he urged again, pulling me onward. Reluctantly, I turned away from the lake, the laughter and pleas swirling in my mind like smoke, making it hard to breathe. The deeper we moved into the woods, the thicker the trees seemed to grow, as if trying to trap us in their shadows. After what felt like forever, we stumbled into a clearing. Moonlight flooded over us, giving me a moment to catch my breath. But that moment was short-lived. To our left, hidden in a haze of fog, was a dilapidated shack. Its wooden frame leaned precariously, and its broken windows looked like empty eyes. "What do you think?" Tom whispered, glancing toward the shack. I hesitated. "We should keep moving. We can't stay out here." But just as I said that, A flash of light flickered from inside. It was faint but undeniable. I squinted, unsure if it was a trick of the moonlight. Then the door creaked open slowly, revealing a silhouette. My heart sank when I recognized the figure. It was the woman from the lake. "Help me!" she called again, her voice now tinged with desperation. "She needs you both!" The shadows around us thickened as her words sank into my mind. I looked at Tom, his brow furrowed, caught between doubt and concern. Before I could decide, I heard a low growl come from behind us, as if something in the dark had begun to awaken. I felt a chill creep up my spine. Then everything went dark. I gasped as the darkness swallowed me. I didn't know how long we were enveloped in the void, but it felt like being lost in a nightmare where time didn't exist. I strained to hear anything over the pounding of my heart. A moment later, a dim light flickered back to life around me, not radiating from above or below, but seemingly from everywhere. My whole body ached, and I blinked rapidly, trying to focus. I found myself on the ground, damp earth pressing against my back. Tom lay beside me, groaning as he pushed himself up. The woman from the shack was now standing over us, pulsating with that eerie light, her features twisted with distress. "They're coming," she whispered urgently, glancing around as if expecting shadows to spring alive. "We have to move, now." "Move where?" Tom snapped, still trying to catch his breath. "Why did everything just go dark?" "I don't have time to explain," she said. "The whispers, they're gaining strength. We can't let them catch us." She extended her hand to me, fear etched in her eyes. I hesitated. "Who are you? What's happening?" The growl sounded again, closer this time. My instinct screamed at me to trust my gut, to run, but the weight of the woman's gaze made it impossible to look away. Something about her pulled at my compassion, even while alarm bells rang in my head. "Please, we don't have time," she cried softly, eyes brimming with urgency. I glanced at Tom, and his face mirrored the indecision I felt. The sense of duty surged in me, battling the rising fear. "What if she's leading us into danger?" I whispered to him, a hint of desperation creeping into my voice. "I know," he replied, his tone grave. "But can we take that risk? What if she's telling the truth?" In that instant, the decision formed. I nodded, and without saying a word, I reached for her hand, intertwining my fingers with hers. I could feel a shiver run through her, but she initiated the pull, guiding us cautiously to our feet. "Follow me," she instructed, pulling us toward the edge of the clearing. The air grew thicker, a palpable tension steeping around us. I could sense shadows shifting, watching us. Suddenly I heard voices, whispers rising and falling like the tide. They looped and tangled around us, words I couldn't quite grasp. My mind raced, battling confusion and dread. "What are those voices?" "They want to trap you," the woman said, her breath chilly against my ear. "They feed on fear and despair. Keep moving. Don't listen to them." As we sprinted through the trees, the laughter returned, taunting us from the depths of the woods. It was a wicked choir that wrapped itself around me, pulling at my thoughts. I fought to push it away, focusing on the path ahead. Then I felt something brush against my leg. A cold, clammy touch. I stumbled, almost falling, but Tom caught me just in time. "What was that?" I gasped. "Keep going," he urged, his voice breaking with urgency. The trees closed in as we pressed forward, and I realized we weren't alone anymore. Something lurked just behind us, creeping silently, waiting for the right moment. That's when I saw it, a flash of eerie eyes watching from the underbrush. My heart caught in my throat and terror overtook me. I wanted to turn and run, but the darkness was already upon us. "Run!" Tom shouted, and we took off, desperate to escape whatever had awakened in the night. The shadows stretched and formed into something more than just a mere illusion. Whatever we had just unleashed was determined to hunt us down. We dashed through the forest, the trees a blur of dark shapes and rustling leaves. Tom's grip on my hand was tight, as if he thought if he let go, I might just vanish into the shadows. The woman led us, her glowing presence a beacon in the murky night. But even that light began to dim as the whispers grew louder, swirling around us like a tangible fog. "Faster!" she urged, her voice tense with fear. I could hear the breath of something following us, close enough to feel its chill creep into my bones. My lungs burned, but I pushed through, driven by survival and a growing sense of dread. The ground was uneven, roots and rocks threatening to trip me, but I didn't dare look back. If I did, I might lose my nerve. I could sense it, a presence lurking just outside my vision, stalking us like a predator hunting its prey. Then suddenly we broke into another clearing. It was eerily quiet here. The gust of wind seemed to extinguish the woman's light, plunging us into darkness. My heart raced. "Where do we go?" Tom gasped, looking around. I don't know," the woman stammered. For the first time her confidence wavered. "We need to find the river. It's our only chance." "The river?" I echoed, bewildered. "What's at the river?" "Safety, I hope," she replied, but there was an uncertainty in her voice that chilled me more than the air. Before I could ask for clarification, the air around us shifted. The whispers morphed into agonized cries, and suddenly an unbearable weight pressed down on my chest. I felt it, the source of the voices. It wasn't just fear and despair, it was anger, regret, pain clawing at the edges of my mind. I struggled to breathe, to think. "What do they want?" I shouted, desperation creeping into my voice. "The lost," she said, "those who wandered too far and couldn't find their way back. They want us to join them." Everything clicked into place. This wasn't just a mundane forest. This was a place of darkness, drawing lost souls to its depths. "We can't stay here," I pleaded. "Move!" Tom shouted, pulling me toward a narrow path to the right. I followed instinctively, the soft glow of the woman's light flickering behind us. But just as we began to run again, a cry echoed from the trees, sharper than the rest, bounding toward us with the weight of despair. Then I saw it. A shadowy figure burst from the underbrush. It lunged at us, a grotesque mouth twisted into a scream that was silent. The darkness seemed to break apart around it, revealing its true form. The thing had too many limbs, twisted and snapping in ways they shouldn't. "What do we do?" I yelled, panic flooding my voice. "Just keep running!" the woman screamed, and with renewed urgency we ran, weaving in and out of trees. But that thing wasn't giving up. The fast pace of its footsteps behind us matched our desperate race. The cold fingers of fear clawed at my back. I forced myself to look ahead. There had to be a way out. Then I spotted it, a sliver of silver glinting under the moonlight through the trees. "The river!" I shouted, renewed hope flooding my veins. Just then, as we reached the water's edge, the shadow lunged one more time, and I realized with horror that it wasn't just behind me, it was above us too. "Jump!" the woman commanded, and without thinking I leapt into the cool embrace of the river. The water enveloped me, and as I sank, the darkness faded, if only for a moment. But the creature continued its pursuit on the surface, shrieking as it approached the edge. Desperation coursed through me as I kicked toward the bank, but then, as I surfaced, gasping for air, I realized the woman was gone. The river swallowed her in a crash of waves, leaving me and Tom floating in the eerie moonlight. "Where is she?" Tom asked, eyes wide with horror. I shook my head, dread settling deep inside me. "I don't know." Just then, something brushed against my leg again, cold and clammy. I turned just in time to see the shadow rise from the depths, an undulating mass that began to break the surface of the water. Panic surged through me as I yelled, "We have to go!" And with all my strength, I swam to the bank, lurching to pull Tom with me as we scrambled onto dry land. But the river churned behind us, and I could feel its darkness seeping into the ground around us. Before I could catch my breath, the shadows encroached once more. Something in the darkness shifted, and I knew the night was far from over. The whispers had only just begun their call. The cold water clung to my skin as we stumbled onto the muddy shoreline, struggling to catch our breath. My heart hammered in my chest, the echoes of the shadow's howl rattling through me. The fear that began any moment earlier had now evolved into pure terror. "What was that thing?" Tom asked, his voice shaky, even in the chaos that was beginning to settle around us. We lay gasping on the bank, the river's surface now reflecting a placid calm that completely contradicted our frantic hearts. I don't know," I panted, still shaking from the cold and panic, "but it wanted us." I could still hear the laughter in the back of my mind, mingling with the chilling cries of the lost. But now it only echoed softly, as if it were retreating back into the depths. We glanced around, adrenaline still coursing through our veins, as I realized how vulnerable we were on the bank. The woman, the strange figure who had led us, had disappeared without a trace, swallowed up by the water. I felt a twinge of guilt, wondering if we could have saved her had we acted differently. Had I let my fear guide my choices rather than my instincts? "Do you think she made it?" Tom asked, seeing the worry etched across my face. "What if she's still in there?" "I don't know," I admitted, pulling my knees to my chest and knocking mud off my legs. "But we can't just stand here. We have to find a way back." The words felt inadequate against the backdrop of dread lurking behind us, that all the shadows waiting for our next move. The forest loomed, trees standing like ancient sentinels, quiet but oppressive, watching us with their twisted branches. How much time had passed since we jumped into the river? It felt surreal, as if time itself had slowed to a crawl. I stood, glancing down the shoreline. "Let's get to the road. We'll figure out our next step there." Tom nodded, but anxiety threaded through his eyes. What if that thing wasn't the only one? All those voices, it feels like they're still calling. I tried to brush off the thought, brushing mud from my hands. We'll deal with that when we get there. But with every step we took into the woods, the weight of lingering whispers slithered back into my mind. Moving cautiously, we hugged close to the riverbank, where the ground felt slightly more solid beneath our feet. The laughter re-emerged, faint and ghostly, winding its way around us. Each step seemed imbued with the potential for something watching, lurking just beyond view. As we walked further into the trees, I caught glimpses of shadows dancing around us. Moments later, I nearly gasped as I spotted the markings again. Those strange symbols etched into the bark of the trees, glowing faintly in the moonlight. "Look!" I pointed with a shiver that ran along my spine. Tom winced as he approached the tree. "We need to avoid this marker," he said, glancing around as if expecting something to leap into view. I felt unease crawl over my skin. It's like we're stepping into a trap. What do they mean? I wondered aloud, trying to push my questions away. What if they're a warning? Before I could dwell on it further, the laughter crescendoed again, sharper and more demanding. It felt closer now, as though the very woods were conspiring behind me. "We have to keep moving," I urged, gripping Tom's arm and tugging him forward. As we hurried past, I thought I saw the shadows shift again, life swirling just out of reach. The night felt alive, charged with something uncanny that urged us onward, deeper into the dark woods. It was unbearable yet compelling, igniting a mixture of dread and curiosity. After what felt like hours, our breaths mingling with the cold air, we began to glimpse a flickering light ahead. "Is that—" My voice trailed off. Relief bloomed when we stepped out into another clearing, revealing a dirt road ahead, illuminated by the pale glow of a street lamp flickering against the dark sky. But then a sense of dread washed over me. The laughter returned with an intensity that threatened to overwhelm my senses. "God, make it stop!" I cried, looking around desperately, feeling the trees close around us, as if they were encasing us in a twisted embrace. The shadows intensified, stretching longer as the air thickened with weight. Faint whispers mingled with the laughter, blending into a distorted melody that echoed through the air. "Come join us. Come play. Let's go, now." Tom pulled me. We dashed toward the light, panic propelling our feet as the laughter transformed into cries, with voices rising around us. As we reached the edge of the road, I dared to glance back one last time. Shadows writhed amongst the trees, morphing into haunting forms that seemed to beckon for us, lost souls that were ever hungry for new companions. "Don't look!" Tom shouted, bounding ahead to reach safety. I followed, my pulse racing, striving to catch up. Just as we crossed into the light's embrace, an icy gust of wind swept past us, chilling to the bone. I shivered, and a flash of movement snagged my gaze. A figure stood on the opposite side of the tree line, still and silent. I watched it, heart pounding with a paralyzing mixture of dread and curiosity. "Elise?" I whispered, caught off guard as the shadow turned toward me, revealing a face so reminiscent of the woman who had led us through the darkness. For a split second, I felt something deep stir within me, urging me to step closer, and then she vanished, just as quickly as she had appeared. My heart sank, the echoes of lost laughter swirling around once again. "We can't stay here, let's go." Tom tugged at my arm, pulling me back toward the flickering street lamp. I nodded, forcing myself to turn away despite the lingering urge to delve deeper into the shadows. As we crossed into safety, I glanced back one last time at the brambles of the forest. The trees stood silent, concealing their mysteries. A wave of unease washed over me, grateful we had escaped, yet intensely drawn to the enigma of what remained behind. Once we reached the road, the familiarity of its scent and the calming cadence of civilization washed over me. But as I stood there, even the distant sounds felt like an echo from somewhere dark. I knew whatever we faced was not buried in the past. The lake, the laughter, Elise, it all lingered there, waiting for its next chance to beckon. "I hope we never have to come back," Tom said, glancing behind us. "Yeah," I replied, the weight of uncertainty gnawing at my heart. "But I still think about it sometimes." As we walked away, the night still loomed behind us, and I couldn't shake the sense that we weren't entirely alone, that the shadows still had their story to tell.